Let's try this then.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, well, good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crapper with one of Britain's leading raku potters, Mr. Shaun Hall,
Good evening.
and me, Tim Appleton, and I write books and stuff. Um, and tonight, Shaun and I will be discussing our top 10 Genesis outtakes. The format will be that we'll do it in reverse order, and then we'll do our also ran segment as a penultimate part. That's the plan. Now, this was the sort of starting point for this was the double archives package, which Genesis brought out many years ago. There was sort of an archives packages 1 and 2 of outtakes and B-sides and things like that. And there was a line in it, which I recall, I think, not word for word, but paraphrasing, a line from Tony Banks where he said certain people in the band thought that some of these songs should have actually made it onto the album. Right. He sort of said it in that. I imagine his sort of slightly passive aggressive voice saying that. So yeah, that was our starting point, really. You know, the theme here is should have been on the album, right? So I suppose this could be considered another one of our deconstructive videos, as it were. Not our first, because we did a greatest Beatles outtakes video, which you're welcome to check out on either on the podcast or on the YouTube channel. So yeah, Shaun, how did you find this one? Did you have fun putting this together?
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought there's many too many outtakes on that list. But actually, a lot of these I hadn't heard for years. I mean, my brother Steve, he used to collect some odds and ends and
You got a brother
singles.
called Steve?
My brother Steve, yes, my brother. Have we got a jingle for Steve? Does it still exist? But he used to collect the singles and so on. So I'd heard various B-sides over the years, but yeah, it was quite nice to go back and hear some of these, or some of them I'd just completely forgotten about. So yeah, good, good, good.
I mean, I think that it's amazing how many good outtakes they had. Maybe not so much from the classical period of Genesis, the Gabriel period, but the later albums they had a real surfeit of songs, didn't they? Which of course reminds me of what a great band they were. The other thing is, I mean, we don't have to get into this now. Maybe we could get into it later on. But I think it makes me think that there's quite a few of their albums that could have been double albums. Back in the 70s, because there were such long albums anyway. The running time is so long for Genesis albums, much longer than it is for most groups. In fact, I always sort of wonder how they technically managed to get the grooves on the vinyl. But if you add those together with the outtakes, the respective outtakes from the different from the different albums, you could be looking at over an hour's worth of material sometimes, or sometimes even more. And it's interesting that they chose never to bother to do that, with the exception of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and then, of course, We Can't Dance later on, where it just, it became impossible for it not to be a double. All right, good. Well, look, let's without further ado, let's get into it. So, would you like to start us off, Shaun? Give us your number 10,
sure.
if you will.
My number 10. My number 10 is Vancouver, which came out 1978, I believe. So it's Phil and Mike, I think, had a hand in writing this. And it was B-side of Many Too Many.
Was it Phil? Was it Phil and Mike? Was it this one?
I thought it was Phil and Mike. I may be
right,
wrong,
okay.
because it is a sort of slightly Banksy, and I think a lot of these numbers are, heavily feature Tony Banks. I thought it was Tony Banks, I must admit, who wrote this, but pretty sure I read it was Phil and Mike. May be wrong. Someone will tell me, give me a kick up the backside.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, I think lyrically, it's a bit like She's Leaving Home, the Beatles, about this girl, deciding she's had a row with the parents and disappears, packs her bags, but decides to come home. So in that respect, maybe not like she's leaving home. She's sort of leaving home. Um, but it's a pleasant little song. I sort of say it's a bit Banksian with the keyboards. It's sort of that sort of romantic sound that Tony Banks was getting. Whether he had a little button, romance, and on his keyboard, on his. But yeah, I think it's a nice little song. And Vancouver, I think it was called Vancouver because Phil had moved there in about I think an attempt to salvage his marriage. But was that before this song was released or after? But it's curiously named Vancouver, so maybe someone can tell me, put me out of my misery. And that's all I have to say, I'm afraid, on this.
All right, yes, I've just checked it. Actually, you're right. It's Phil and Mike.
Oh, it is Phil and Mike.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lovely one, isn't it? Yes, well,
Mm.
I may exercise my prerogative of coming back to that one in a minute. Now, my number 10 is Happy the Man from the Foxtrot sessions,
Mhm.
I believe.
Mhm.
Now, what did I like about this one? Well, nice Simon and Garfunkel-esque vocals on this one, I think, and some quite nice sort of harmonic, melodic developments, so forth, and good lyric in general. I mean, it's sort of surrealist, I think, as a lot of their lyrics were, in the Gabriel period. Also contains the brilliant line, "Like a nun with a gun, I'm wonderful fun," and the even terser. Someone says he's Jesus Christ, but I don't care.
Just don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. So that's good. But yeah, I mean, it's. I find it's quite pleasing. This one, I think it's not one of their greatest tracks. I partly sort of included it for nostalgic reasons, because as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the only serious sort of non-album tracks from the classic Gabriel period. Was released as a single, implausibly. I mean, imagine being on the dance floor in 1972, trying to chat up a girl, and this comes on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably it's an incongruous single, but maybe that's a sign of the times, because these bands obviously didn't care much about singles.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, this could have been, because like I did a video on Gentle Giant, Power and the Glory, right, which was been very well received. And that Gentle Giant were told at the same time as they were doing this sort of concept album, "Oh, can you do a single, lads?" And they did a single called "The Power and the Glory," which is kind of crap. And this is a little bit like that. It sounds like they just sort of knocked it out in an afternoon, which sometimes can work, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's a little bit of a throw with this one, but I think it's just it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside because of the period that it's from and everything.
Yeah.
All
It's been
right, good.
knocking around a while, hadn't it? That song, I think.
Oh, is
They've
that
been.
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I might come back to that. I might not. Let's see.
I mean,
So.
it's difficult to know what they had knocking around, wasn't it? Because there was quite a lot of sort of early outtakes and stuff, most of which are pretty forgettable, I think. But there's very little record of what they were actually doing in the studio at that time. It's a bit chaotic, isn't it? The early
Mm,
Genesis recording career. So
yeah.
so yeah, they might have had ideas floating around, and then finally
Yeah.
one day during a particular album session tried to lay it down. But anyway, yeah. All right, good. So, your number 9, Sean, if you will.
Number 9 for me is Evidence of Autumn from around about 1980 from the Duke sessions. And I quite like this, I must admit. It's quite, again, sort of romantic-y sounding ballad, a Banksian. That's what I'd call it, Banksian. Um, you know,
Banksy.
Banksy. The girl from all those songs, she came in like an angel. It's got a sort of electric grand piano in there. It's got a curious sort of up tempo session which follows on, and that reminded me a bit of Pigeons. I don't know why. Why would they want to revisit that? I don't know, but I feel they did. And it was the B side of Misunderstanding, and I think they stuck it out again on Three Sides Live. As the fourth side, not live.
Hmm.
But it's sort of a nostalgic-y feeling song, and I don't mind it actually. It's quite good. I mean, a lot of Genesis rejects would be any other band's best material, I think. So, yeah,
That's
it's interesting.
that's right. I mean, we can carry on this conversation a bit if you like about this song because this is also my number nine, Evidence of
Oh,
Autumn.
good grief!
Yeah, so you're right. There's that up tempo bit, isn't there, that reminds me a little bit of One for the Vine.
Oh,
It's only missing the sort of duck call, isn't it? That they had on One for the Vine.
yeah,
It's quite
that
off of
is.
them not to include a duck call. I mean, yeah, I think this is. Yeah, as you said, it's a very characteristic Tony Banks number. This, isn't it? It's slightly medley-ish. So yeah, One for the Vine, Burning Rope type of deal. Um, I mean, in some ways, I think the melody is more interesting than those two songs. But I mean, at this point, he was just sort of like churning out these kind of like piano ballads, wasn't he? I mean, in some ways, this is a bit too truncated. This one, those ones were overstretched for me, and I find this too truncated. Like it could have been extended a bit further. Um, but yeah, it's got some lovely developments in it. I mean, I love how he, as you say, it's romantic, isn't it? I love how he sort of weaves the vocals into what is essentially a very sort of beautiful and quite moving, like Rachmaninoffy piano piece, and I think that this is I think this song's infinitely better than Cul-de-sac, which they
Mm.
included on Duke, which for my money is probably the worst song he ever wrote for Genesis. Um, I would say the lyric is not their best here. I mean, a man meets his perfect woman and then she leaves him. That seems to be the story. I mean, it's slightly lacking in dramatic tension, but as I say, that could be an effect of the fact that it's such a truncated number. But yeah, it's just those. It's like he just churn out these piano
Yeah.
pieces, these beautiful romantic piano pieces, with like words intertwined all day long at that point. All right, very good. How about eight then?
Number eight. Well, again, it's 1980 from the Duke sessions. I've got Open Door, which was B-side to Duchess, I believe. Recorded in 79, came out 1980. Again on Three Sides Live, on the fourth side, not live.
Mhm.
Um, and it's sort of kind of a melodramatic number, I think. Mike Rutherford. Um, it's sort of quite emotional sort of sounding lyrics, I think,
Mhm.
um what's it? I can't see you, I can't feel you anywhere. I've just a memory of that open door. Something's gone badly wrong in a relationship somehow. I suppose we can all relate to that occasionally. It's quite a pretty song, but I think ultimately maybe doesn't go anywhere in my opinion, but it's not bad at all. So got that number eight. I mean, and actually a lot of these, the last few that I've talked about, um, I think they could be pretty much interchangeable at this point. So it's a bit arbitrary, my list, but I've had to come up with a list. So
That's
there
right.
we are, number eight.
Yes, a list was required.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sort of along the same lines. My number eight is Vancouver. From the end, then there were three sessions. Um, I think this is I think this one should have gone on the album. You know, theme motif of the night. I think it's a lovely, lovely little track. This I actually thought. I have to say, I have to be honest. I thought this was a Phil track, but I just checked it. You're right. It's Phil and Mike, which makes sense because it's guitar-y, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it was um, about the end of his. It's about the end of a relationship, isn't it? As a lot of these sort of
Mm.
songs from that period were. But I think it's sort of unusually sort of heartfelt, really. And I assumed it was a true story. I thought it was about the end of his his marriage,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
right? Which you're right. I can't remember the exact chronology, you know,
Mm.
but you know, Phil often seemed to do his best work when he'd been abandoned by a woman, a wife. Right. So this is an example of that. But I think yeah, this is sort of I think it's sort of unusually harmonically imaginative, this and sectional actually for a Phil track. It's got sort of medley-ish elements, which I think shows how much the others had rubbed off on him. But I mean, as you say, the structure, it's possible the structure did come from Mike. So, but anyway, it really works, this track. And I wish that, you know, I wish it had been sort of, I wish it were better known in a way.
Mm.
I can't. Yeah, I can't really say much more about that. I think yeah, Vancouver was the place where he went to patch up his marriage, wasn't it?
Mm.
And so that's why I assumed it was sort of autobiographical, because a lot of his stuff seems to be autobiographical. But anyway, yeah, very nice tune,
Yeah.
that one.
Yes.
Now where are we on 7 then?
Number 7, I've gone for Happy the Man from. We've talked
Okay.
about it from 72. I think you've mentioned the lyrics. Now, apparently, the title was inspired by a line by the Roman poet Horace, and well, apparently, happy the man and happy he alone, he who can call today his own. So, because they were sort of scholars of the classics, weren't they? You know, Peter and
I
well,
expect
probably. Oh, it's probably they were forced to learn it, weren't they? You know.
they probably had to get up at 5 a.m. in Charterhouse every morning
Yeah,
and
yeah, and
reread the
chant,
classics.
do two monastic chants. Um, well, they did play this live quite a bit, and I think they chopped and changed the lyrics a lot, which begged the question to me: has Mick Barnard had a role in this track?
Interesting
It could
question.
be. The other thing for me, which I find odd, I quite like this, by the way. I mean, it's more like you say that it's like a fuzzy memory of a time when you heard it. It's not especially their greatest material ever, but the drum part when that comes in, it feels a little bit perfunctory to me, and I
Right.
sort of it's a bit half-hearted, and I sort of think, is that Phil playing that?
Mm.
I mean, I suppose it must have been, but you know, it
So
could have been.
what what's your thesis? Is you think it's Mick Barnard again?
It's either Mick Barnard or one of the other trio of drummers that they had. Was it John
This
Mayhew, the
this
last
is
one?
your
We
conspiracy. This is your
it's like
conspiracy theory that
it
that
just
Mick
doesn't.
Barnard was the secret genius of the band.
Well, this is like who played drums on Dear Prudence, isn't it? You know, sounds like two completely different drummers. Anyway, I just thought it sounded a bit throwaway. It's like, you know, either Phil was concussed or it's not his usual standard. But anyway, yeah, and a nice little number, really, you know. And apparently there's lots of different pressings of it, and there's slightly different mixes of this track with different fade-ins and slightly different instrumentals. So it's a funny one, this, but a bit of a rarity, I guess. Happy the Man.
Yeah, that's interesting what you say about the
Mm.
drums. I think you're right. They haven't arranged the drum part properly, have they?
No.
Which makes it feel a bit like a more of a throwaway than it
Mm.
actually was. The track. Perhaps he couldn't think of a good part.
Mm.
Because when he finally comes in halfway through the track, it's slightly uncertain, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
almost as if he's thinking, I should have come in earlier, you know. But it's interesting your point. I hadn't thought about that, about the sort of stoic, you know, the stoic philosophy, you know, because that's happy the man, you know, that thing. The Stoics were big on being happy, weren't they? You know, because I think Stoicism was all about Tim's pedantry corner coming up, by the way. Stoicism was all about, you know, kind of accepting, you know, with kind of like a certain good grace and resignation that, you know, the material circumstance, the contingent material circumstances in which you find yourself, essentially, you know, without trying to wish things into existence, you know, this sort of kind of radical materialism, you know. So just embrace carpe diem, as they said,
Mm.
as they said in the Dead Poets Society. So yeah, it's a Stoic song, isn't it? Happy the Man. You're right. That makes me like it more.
Oh, good, good.
which is the point of doing an exercise like
Yeah.
this, isn't it?
Hmm.
Now, I'm going to, for my number 7, I'm going to go in a different direction. This is from a We Can't Dance outtake, Hearts on Fire.
Mm.
Terrible title. It's a sort of, that's a kind of anachronistic kind of like 1980s title, isn't it? But yeah, it's, I really love this track. I think it's like a sort of I think it's like a sublimated '60s soul song with more interesting chords, because it's Genesis after all. I just think it's I mean, I also think it's a great sort of all round performance by Phil. This one. I mean, it's an interesting tune on the verse, which I suspect he had a big hand in writing, and the development's interesting as well. And I really love the bit where he sort of doubles the riff. And give it up. And I'm sorry now and give it. I can't remember the words. And he uses a strange sort of accent while he's doing it. Phil doesn't have great form on accents, I have to say. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard Illegal Alien.
Oh
You know,
God, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's probably best he leaves the accents to one side. But I think it's done here as a sort of like slightly absurdist way. He's kind of mumbling the words, and I think it's an interesting touch. I remember that Frank Zappa once said that, or I believe he once said, it could be apocryphal, because Frank Zappa is one of those people that a lot of people quote apocryphally. He said that the point of a composer is to decorate a moment in time. And I think this is a good example. There's a sort of touch to the vocals there, which are kind of fascinating to listen to. You don't really know why. There's something sort of completely absurd about it, but it's thoroughly entertaining. So yeah, I think it should have been on the album. This one,
Yeah.
as by the way, should have been, I think, on the Shoreline. Which is a great song and has a beautiful middle section. Although that's not actually on my list, I have to say. So they did have plenty of pretty good material around the time of We Can't Dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thereby begging the question of why they included some of the material that they did. But as Tony Banks said, some people thought that some of these songs should have been on the album. So there you go.
True.
All right, good. Now number 6, Sean.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that I'm not actually on fire. I don't know if you can see that. It's my tea because it's turned quite chilly over here in good old Blighty.
Right.
So I'm out in my man shed.
You're not drinking like mate like the Argentinians, are you?
It's green tea, green tea.
Right.
Right, number 6. I digress. Number 6, I've got "You Might Recall," which you might think is a surprise for me to say that because I'm not terribly a big fan of Abacab, unlike other members of the Crapper team, but I do like the 3x3 EP, and I've got "You Might Recall," which I think is insanely catchy. Actually, I'm listening to this. It's got that incredibly catchy hook, and then it's got a very sort of jangly Beatlesy guitar part from Mike Rutherford, I presume. And I think it's rather good. This song. It's all I've got to say about it. But I've totally forgotten about this, and I thought it's great, and they left it off. I suppose it didn't fit, I guess. I mean, but it's brilliant. And I mean, the Paperlate EP, got to number 10, I think, over here in the UK. So I mean, it did pretty well. And of course, it was I mentioned that sort of Beatlesy guitar. I mean, it's nominally Beatlesy, I suppose, but they mocked up a sort of mock Twist and Shout cover, didn't they, to the whole sort of EP? So it's very, very sort of early Beatles. And the liner notes were done by Tony Barrow, who'd done some of the original Beatles EPs. So 3x3, I think, was a nod to a Stones EP, oddly enough, which was called 5x5. So 3x3, yeah. But
Right.
there you go. So you might recall.
They're going with they're sticking with the and then there were three theme at this point,
Yeah, yeah.
even though it was a few years on. Yeah, that's
Mm,
a good catch. I hadn't thought of that one. Yeah,
mm.
I'm saying nothing on that song because
Right.
it may come up later on. Um, and my number 6 is "It's Yourself" from
Mm,
the Trick of the Tail sessions. Um, I really love uh, the mood of this one. I think it shows what Steve Hackett can add to a sort of ballad arrangement. And I think that whatever you think of Steve Hackett, I think that they did lose that after he left. That sort of those sort of interesting and original guitar textures. They probably couldn't have ever done another Entangled, could they? After he left, and not just because he wrote it. I mean, he has got a certain sound, let's say a post Anthony Phillips kind of sound,
yeah.
which I think is really interesting, and it's definitely in evidence here. I have to say, I love the tune. I love the relative minor development in it. I think it's perfect. What could he say? I think that's really nice, that bit. They throw away the end of the line slightly, but it doesn't matter because that bit's so striking. I think that
Mm,
it really works. Now, going back to a topic I was discussing earlier, this track sort of goes into Los Endos, doesn't it?
mhm,
In
mhm.
a sense, that's to say that the fade out from this track is actually the same as the introduction to Los Endos, which is the final track on the actual album, as everyone will know. And it's a nice sort of transition between the two. So, I mean, one presumes that this was edited out from that album, again because of time restrictions, right?
Yeah.
And as I said before, I think this raises the question of whether Trick of the Tail could have actually been a double, because it's a very long album anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think about that because I'm a nerd. And I wondered if there were other parts of that album that could have been sort of elongated, as it were. And there's
Mm,
not too many, but I mean, Squonk fades slightly unnecessarily, in my view, fades out. Um,
mm,
and I have occasionally wondered whether Squonk fades out as a sort of prelude to the ending, because Squonk comes back in at the end of the album, doesn't it? Right. So did it fade out as a prelude to Los Endos? Are you supposed to connect those things in your mind? I mean, I don't
mm,
know. I mean, but it's not an obvious connection. So I sometimes wonder when I'm listening to Squonk, where is this track going to go next? Um, and but I suppose conversely they also could have edited some of the tracks on that album slightly. I mean, some of them are
mm,
perfect, Dance on a Volcano,
mm.
Entangled, Robbery, Assault and Battery. Ripples is a curious construction, because it goes into something different in the middle in a
Yes.
slightly speeded up, isn't it, for no apparent reason. So again, it's sort of fading in and fading out, and I always think that's a bit of a cop out when it comes to composition, especially because these were they were so hot on composition. These guys, you think that seems like too much of a sleight of hand for them. But anyway, we could leave this discussion, I suppose, for another day. But my point is that I think this track could have happily been included on Trick of the Tail, which is, and
Yeah.
it's not the first time I'm going to make that point tonight. But yeah, anyway, um,
Mm.
what
Good
about
call.
5, Sean?
Number 5. Well, we're back in back on the Paperlate EP with Paperlate, which again really like it. Oddly for me, it's a bit Beatley. He's got the Earth, Wind and Fire horns on there. Uh, Comes of course from the line "Paperlate," cried a voice in the crowd from Selling England. Dances with the Moonlit Night, I believe. Dance with the Moonlit Night. Um, it's uh, it's just a great sort of slightly 60s sounding pastiche, really. And I haven't really got too much to say about it, but it's just, again, really catchy. Um, Great, good song.
All right. Again, uh, my lips are pursed. My number 5 is "Do the Neurotic,"
Mm. Ooh.
which is an Invisible Touch outtake. Now, I love this track. I think it's a brilliant instrumental. Um with the emphasis on mental, I've written here, because it's kind of crazy. It's all over the place. Very fast, very exciting. They don't know. This sounds like a banal thing to say. They don't normally play this fast, do they? Certainly, at the
Yeah.
beginning is very fast. But yeah, I think the harmonic developments are great. But also sometimes the melodies. It's got no words, of course, so you can see how they're incredible melodic writers, even when they're not writing for voice. And I think it really works here. And this track is where I sort of buy. I start to buy Genesis's own, carefully crafted narrative about how they developed, because you remember they always saying like, oh, we kept doing the long tracks even after we were having hit singles, so
Mm.
from our perspective, we never really sold out, and I think that really this is a long sectional, interesting track, somewhat modular. It could have been on it could have been on Duke this,
Mm.
or even something earlier. I mean, it feels to me a bit like an echo of the kind of writing they were probably doing together after Gabriel left. When they were putting
Mm.
Trick of the Tail together, particularly at the beginning, even before Steve Hackett was there, when it was just the three of them.
Yeah.
It feels like to me like this is the sort of writing that they would have done together. They're all
Mm.
switched on, they're all contributing, all coming up with good ideas. And sort of thinking outside the box, as people say. Is this track better than the Brazilian? I don't know. I mean, it's longer, you know. So maybe
Mm.
that's why they chose the Brazilian to close Invisible Touch. And again, the question of it could have been a double
Mm.
arises, and also in the case of Invisible Touch, an album like Invisible Touch, I think, was it diminished by being a single album? Because actually, it's a little bit over concise, that album, I think.
Mm.
And they did have some really good outtakes from that record.
Mm.
But yeah, so that's my number five, and I'm
Yeah.
sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one I can remember, and I remember thinking, well, that's bloody better than half the stuff on the album, But I don't know about a double album. That would have been double the torment for me. But anyway, that is a good track.
Yeah,
I would admit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right,
Okay.
good. Well, look, what's your four then?
At four, well, I've got It's Yourself, and you've spoken very eloquently about it.
Thank you very much.
It, now, it was originally titled Beloved Summer. Did you know that?
Hmm.
Yeah, apparently
Did
so.
not.
Yeah, Beloved Summer.
It's got a sort
Yeah,
of summery feel,
it
hasn't it?
has. Yes, and it's very sort of sweet and pretty and sort of trippy, isn't it? I think this song, and it's got two parts sort of melded together, and I suppose it goes into a slightly different. Doesn't go into Los Endos, does it? It's a bit of a surprise, doesn't it? It goes into this sort of, I think, a sort of a sound somewhat like the end of Dance with the Moonlit Night, that sort of section before it goes into I Know What I Like. It's a bit of a throwback to that. And I just wonder whether probably Tony Banks. In fact, there was a funny comment on a Facebook page, and they said, why wasn't this on Trick of the Tail? This is great stuff from Steve Hackett, and somebody just wrote because Tony Banks. That was it. He vetoed it, I should think, because well, I think he actually said that he said, Genesis don't do this sort of psychedelic trippy stuff. We just don't do it. So I can understand. But again, this outtake is could be a very good track by another band. So they never really got into writing. Well, Phil did, but I mean, did they get into writing much for other people, particularly? I mean, they could have done because they had all this stuff.
Yeah.
They could have sold one to Frank Sinatra, couldn't they? I'm not saying this, but
Pigeons.
it's match of the day. Yeah. Oh dear. But
Um,
it's a great track, this, and it's not nice to hear it. Good.
all right, good. Well, Beloved Summer's a better name, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, my number four is Paper Late. High five.
Mm, great.
From the Abacab sessions.
Mm,
Really good, isn't it? This sort of effortless, kind of almost automatic writing. They're such confident writers, I think. I mean, sometimes that serves them well, I suppose, and sometimes it doesn't. You know, I don't. I mean, I think the same thing happened with the track "Invisible Touch." It was a sort of an automatic write, I think. But I think that doesn't work doesn't work so well on that occasion. But I think it works really well here. Um, you know, they sort of start with this riff and then sort of spin the rest of the structure out of it. You know, it's catchy, fun. You know, lovely developments, amazing sound. You know, amazing sound, and it I think this soul style that Phil was really into. I prefer it when Genesis did it with him, if you know what I mean. I think because I think the writing is so much more interesting because there's such a good writing team, you know. I know you're not a fan of Abacab, but I really like things like No Reply at All. I think the harmonies are so sophisticated, you know, and it sounds like almost a standard Phil Collins solo number from the period from the subsequent period, but there's a lot more going on, I think, and you know, I love it. And as you say, yeah, the sort of meta reference to Selling England by the Pound is probably, you know, welcome. I mean, this is the same band that recorded that album, you know, believe it or
yeah,
not.
yeah.
So yeah, lovely little track. Just I find it impossible to dislike a track like this one. Sean, 3.
Three. Well, we're getting into the big stuff now. I've got The Day the Lights Went Out, which was I believe on Many Too Many, which was wasn't there? There were two tracks I think on side B of Many Too Many. That's strange, isn't
So
it?
Vancouver was the other one, was it? I
Yeah,
can't, yeah,
Vancouver. Yeah, it's
yeah,
odd, isn't it? You know, just sort of
yeah.
tucked away. You know, thrown away casually.
Mm.
And it's a Banks number, and it's I often wonder whether it's Watcher of the Skies Part Two when you sort of listen to the lyrics, because it's very apocalyptic,
Mm.
and there's a sort of supernatural darkness that falls over the world. Um,
Mm.
where 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 did he get this from? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it sounds like a Jose Saramago short story, doesn't it, or something?
and an entity arrives and uh, you know there's this middle section or this break where it says, now I can rest here after my journey, now I can feed here before I continue. Well, there's some entity that's making everyone sort of fall asleep and die basically, and then this alien is somehow feeding on them, on the people. um and then it's quite depressing because the whole thing, the alien leaves and then another alien comes and does the same. So it's extremely sort of grim. You know, there's no sort of let up from this whatever this supernatural alien presence is.
It's a sort of alien farm, like an alien version of Animal Farm.
Yeah, so nice one from Banks. But having said that, you know, I think this is musically a bit of a tour de force. I think the band are playing extremely well. It's quite sort of fast actually, but I don't know, it's got a sort of jaunty feel. I always think, you know, and feels really attacking the drums. But somehow maybe it doesn't quite reflect the grimness of that lyric. I don't know.
Mm.
Um, and perhaps the only criticism of it is that it's a bit too short to get all the to compress this
Mm.
apocalyptic story by Tony Banks into like whatever it is, 3.5 minutes or whatever. But I still really like it. I think it zips along, and I guess it's, you know, it wasn't the style of this wasn't maybe flavor of the month for and then there were three. I don't know if it would have exactly fit on there, but I think it was a strong track. I think sometimes I think it could have gone on there, but I can maybe see their point that I think Phil said basically this song was too wordy, because I think Phil had had enough of One for the Vine and Tony Banks's mad ideas by this point. So I guess Phil's got to sing, hasn't he? He's got to do the lyrics, do the tune.
Yeah, yeah,
So so it ended up on a B-side. But I think it's a really, you know, what's the word? It's just a pleasant surprise to hear it again.
yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have a song from that particular period that isn't just about him breaking up with his girlfriend, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
supernatural
but
entities.
yeah. So look, my number three. I've got a feeling you're going to kill me for this, but my number three is Twilight Ale House.
Mm.
Now, is this from the? I'm not sure when this was from. I mean, this is a melody that was overlaid on a guitar riff that was on the very first album, wasn't it? So obviously, I'm guessing that they wrote this very early on, but I don't think it was laid down until Foxtrot Sessions, if I'm not misremembering. Um, yeah, I mean, this isn't my favorite as well. This isn't my favorite Genesis outtake, as you can tell from the fact that I've put it at number three. But I feel like it would probably be churlish not to include it. In spite of some of its flaws. I mean, I remember you and me have talked about Joe Butler before. Who you went to
Mm.
school with, and I remember playing this song with her, playing this song to her. I think when we were at college, and I said, "Listen, this is great." And then when the chorus came in, she said, "Oh God, they always ruin it." Which I thought was an epic quote about Genesis. But I know what she means. I mean, the first bit is so beautiful, and then I think the rest of it's it kind of rambles a bit. I think for my taste.
Mm.
But I do like the vibe. I'm not big on vibe, but I like the vibe in this one. I like the
Mm.
mythological lyric, and I think the set of sounds that they deploy are quite interesting, and perhaps their first really great. Perhaps it was their first really great song. This one, I don't know. Like their first sort of real achievement, depending on when it was written. Because as I say, it's all a bit mysterious, isn't it? Their
Mm.
first period. But I think it sounds like it could have, it's a sort of
Yeah.
relatively good trespass track, really. This
Mm.
one,
Mm.
and it's full on prog as well.
Mm.
Properly sectional. It's quite long. Um, anyway, yeah. So that's my three. Now, where are you going on to?
Well, I was just going to say again, do you think Mick Barnard had a hand in? Because it's strange, isn't it? The amount of material that Barnard had a hand in.
Look, just drop it, all right?
You know, he doesn't get any credit. He doesn't get any credit. Um, my number two, I've got Inside and Out from the Spot the Pigeon, which the Match of the Day EP is a funny one. Well, I think it was a 12-inch, wasn't it? 12-inch single, very early one.
Yes.
And I'm not particularly fond of either Match of the Day or Pigeons, which I won't go into. They're just not my particular cup of tea. I suppose they're sort of slightly jokey, quirky, fun tracks. But I quite like Inside and Out. I think it's a little jewel chucked away or tucked away even. And basically, there's two sections bolted together. And section one is a sort of a slow sort of mood piece, which is about a man who's wrongfully imprisoned for rape. And
It's a
that's
cheery, it's
that's
a
it's a
cheery
cheery
subject, isn't
number.
it? This one.
And that's Inside. And then we've got the sort of the instrumental jousting between Tony Banks and Steve Hackett with his guitar solo that comes in, and that's the Out section, which represents the man's freedom. And it's not very Me Too, this number, is it? Something that's sort of, I don't know. But I just like
More,
it.
more, more. Me neither.
But I just think I really love this, and I think it's a forgotten number. I think Genesis did play it um, on Steve Hackett's last series of concerts. Didn't play it again. That was it. They dropped it like a stone. But I think again, it certainly it could have gone on Wind and Wuthering. I think this track, and I don't think it would have harmed the album. It would have. There might have been two good tracks on in my opinion, with Blood on the Rooftops. But I just think that, for the final time, I think this is the last studio release with Steve Hackett on, and I think he pulls off a really nice solo on this, and it's quite memorable to hear him sort of unleash. Because I think my problem with him on Wind and Wuthering is when he plays a solo, it's so low in the mix that you sort of can't really tell what he's doing. And it's sort of quite nice here to hear him sort of play with sort of abandon. And it is a sort of final goodbye to that particular era. But I always think this is quite a strong track. I mean, the EP got to number 14, so I think probably at the time it was liked. But I know Genesis are not particularly fond of this EP at all. Um, but I do think Inside and Out has got some good qualities, and maybe should have been on Wind and Wuthering. I mean, there's a few tracks they could have left off that, really, in my opinion. But hang on.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, Steve Hackett likes that one a lot, doesn't he?
He does.
This was where the beginning of the political problems came in.
Mm.
Why isn't this one on the album?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good. Yes, I mean, I've got one or two comments on that, but let's maybe come back to that in a minute, like the Wind and Wuthering stuff and the outtakes. My number two is You Might Recall.
Mm.
Right, which you've already you've already discussed. Yeah, and I echo your enthusiasm. It's always been a favourite of mine. This track, I really love this track, and I think that it really shows that the brilliance of Tony Banks's chordal work. I
Mm.
think it's like a masterclass in piano harmonies, and the key changes that they can produce as well. And the whole sequence is so sort of unpredictable and so long that they only practically have to go through it twice, and they've got a whole song.
Mm.
So it shows that sort of structural bent that Tony Banks had in his writing. It's really, his writing is really exemplary of that way of doing it. But yeah, it's also, as you were sort of mentioning earlier, it's also a good example of their band sound. The Genesis band sound, because they've got this sort of genius arrangement point where the organ chords are being held down, and then the guitar's doing arpeggios over the top, and then you've got Phil's voice sort of snaking around
Mm.
the lovely chordal developments, and it's got a really a compelling sort of drum beat. So it's
Mm.
really sort of organic. And I think this track sounds like Genesis. For that reason, Genesis, it sounds like Genesis and no one else.
Mm.
Like, I feel like there's no other band in the history of rock that could have written this track. uh, no three other people in the history of rock could have come together and produced this
Mm.
result.
Mm.
So I think it's completely unique and
Yeah.
just very sort of exciting. You said Beatlesy. I mean, I don't know whether it's a 12 string on it. That he's playing the Beatles 12 string. I can't quite remember. I just think of it more as arpeggios, really, and I think that's the charm of it. But I can't remember if they played it on 12 string or not. But yeah, I
Mm.
mean, in terms of sophistication, it's Beatlesy. Um,
Mm.
Now let's go on to also rans. Do you have any also rans?
Well, I did only a few actually. One that I thought was interesting was Shepherd, which was from the Trespass sessions, which is sort of folky style track. But I think Peter Gabriel's starting to sort of sing very well on this. That's the one thing I took from it, that his voice is quite quite sort of strong. It's the Gabriel we know. But I just think that the track's a little bit undercooked, or doesn't seem to go anywhere. It's a bit meandering. Again, Pasadena it's an unusual name, isn't it?
Mm,
Pasadena.
mm,
Yeah,
mhm.
what's your wife's name? Pasadena. Strange. I thought that was a little bit undercooked, and there's some backing vocals on there. Now I don't know who's doing it, but they're really sort of who is it?
I think it's Tony Banks, isn't it? It's got to be.
Incredibly weedy sounding
It's his.
vocal.
Yeah, it's Canterbury-esque, isn't it? That's a nice way of putting it.
Right,
Mm.
right, okay. Well, I thought that that was slightly even more underdeveloped. I thought, but interesting.
Mm.
Um, and really, actually, that's about it. Really, I don't know. I don't think I could have. Well, I've mentioned Match of the Day and Pigeons earlier, but I mean, Pigeons is a funny one, isn't it? It's so moronic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose it's funny, and
Well,
maybe that's
pig,
what they're going for.
pigeons are moronic, aren't they?
Yeah, I
I
guess so.
guess.
So they've captured the essence of a pigeon. So there you
Uh,
go.
all right, good. Well, look, yeah, I mean, I think the Shepherd actually, if I'm not misremembering, was a longer part. It was grew into a longer number, didn't it? It was
Yeah.
one of their first sort of like epics, I think. But
Mm,
then they cut bits out of it and used it in other places, I think. But
mm,
yeah, the sort of song part, I think, is more like it is
mm.
shorter. Um, for also rounds, I've got Submarine, which I think is a really solid Tony Banks instrumental, really exciting build up, beautiful tunes, chord progressions. Um, Theoretically, should have been the coda to Dodo, right? Because I think that they wrote a sort of sidelong epic, didn't they, and then cut it down. But I think that it's great. This, I mean, it could have been on the album. I didn't want to go overboard with this Abacab stuff because I like so much of the Abacab sessions. I mean, there's almost nothing I don't like there. So I think, and that really could have been a double album.
But save it for another day.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we have to do an episode, don't we, on Abacab? I think you probably will bow out of that one.
I'll make the tea on that.
But yeah, it's sort of a slight missed opportunity there. I think Open Door.
Mm.
I agree with you about that. I do like The Day the Light Went Out, but I feel like it doesn't. I can see why that one didn't make it onto the album myself because I think it doesn't really go anywhere. Even though you're right, the lyric is nice. I think it's slightly, as you would say, undercooked. I think, and then Pigeons. Yeah, I mean, what I like about Pigeons is that it reminds me of the sort of madness of the Gabriel era. That
Yeah.
it wasn't completely lost. That they were still kind of trying to crack a joke or two. And an
Mm.
absurdist sort of Python-esque humor.
Yeah.
It's quite funnily written. It's got some few jokes in it, actual funny jokes, and it's got that pedal bit, isn't it? Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum,
Mm.
which as you were intimating earlier, it seems to sort of represent the pigeons themselves. Because the omnipresence of the pigeons,
Mm.
they're always there, aren't they? Whatever you're
Mm.
doing in a city, there's always a pigeon there. And so they've got this sort of riff, which is like just the same note over and over again. They're doing a really weird chord sequence over the top. I think it's just not a very exciting song. I think it's sort of more interesting in the conception than it is in the execution, probably.
Yeah.
And final thing related to what you were saying earlier is that I think I think Spot the Pigeon is weaker than three by three. That I totally agree with that. I'm not sure how much you had invested in that point, but I that is definitely how I feel about it. Which to me tells you something about the accompanying albums, as you were alluding to. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Wind and Wuthering, as regular listeners may know, and I think perhaps some of those tracks, Pigeons and Match of the Day, could have fitted on Wind and Wuthering. Might have made it a bit more interesting. Wind and Wuthering is, I find, a bit of a sort of bit pompous, you know.
Mm.
But anyway, that's of no great importance. So, without further ado, let's go to our number ones, shall we?
Yeah.
I think I can guess yours, but you say it in your own voice.
Well, this isn't a particularly good advertisement for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's Twilight Ale House,
I knew it.
which I really like. They played this on and off since about 1970. So Mick Barnard, he might have been there. I've got to give him another mention. The
You
unsung
should, you
creative
should,
genius.
you should do a bloody episode on Mick Barnard if you love him so
I've got
much.
enough material. I've got enough material on him. As you said, I think as you said, recorded during Foxtrot sessions and released as the B-side of "I Know What I Like." And I think it's just performed with great gusto. I think Gabriel's really, on form. He's energetic. He's on fire. We've got a bit of Gabriel flute in there. We've got Banks's organ, which is playing, quite mightily. And I think for once, Steve Hackett is quite high in the mix. I always think on Nursery Crime, there's quite a good balance between Banks's organ and Hackett. He's quite aggressive in his early sort of playing style, and he obviously developed. But I've made this point about did they keep turning him down as they went on? But the lyrics are funny, aren't they? Because it's just like an ode to drinking wine, really. Just a drink to take my sorrow, just a drink and you blast tomorrow, just a drink to make me feel like a man today, a man again. Um, so it's a funny little tune, really. But I just think it's just sort of quite exciting. It captures that sort of spirit of that early sort of era of Gabriel Genesis, and as you say, there's not so many outtakes of that Gabriel era, are there? Really, it comes later, but yeah, it's one of those. I think when you're a sort of Genesis fan, it's like, oh, have you heard Twilight Ale House? Oh no, what album's that on? It's not on an album; it's a B-side. It's like that, and uh,
Yeah.
it just brings back a lot of memories. So yeah, I've had to put that at number one.
There was a time where we would have had trouble getting hold of any of this stuff, wasn't there? Like
Mm.
you would have had to have been
Yeah,
a record
yeah,
collector to have actually
yeah.
had the "I Know What I
That's
Like"
right.
single with this on.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't hear this song for
Mm.
years after I got into
Mm.
Genesis because the albums were also readily available.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, great. Well, yeah, lovely. A nice little tribute there from Sean to Twilight Owl House. Now, my number one is Me and Virgil
Mm.
from the Abacab sessions. I know it was a surprise to me too. I love this track. It feels weird to say it, but it feels weird to come out of the closet, as it were. But I've listened to this track for years on and off. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a Phil track.
Mm.
I believe, and I think it shows how good he can be as a songwriter. He hated it, of course. He apparently called it a dog.
Mm.
Right? They didn't even include it on the archives package because they just, by common consensus, it was a real mistake. This track, but I think it's great. It's got everything this track that I like about Genesis. It's fun. They've got this. It's cowboy. The lyrics are cowboyish, right? And hence Virgil, I suppose, is sort of like an American name, isn't it? That makes it reminiscent of, and then there were three, of course, as you and I have discussed before. I think that it's got a sort of a band, the band vibe, right? Now I don't know why all these bands loved the band so
Yeah.
much. I don't know if you have a theory about that, but they were so influential, weren't they, on everybody?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Get back to basics, isn't it? Back to
that's it.
nature, back to the country.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, that's it. I think you're right. In the first phase of the band's like output, that was probably the idea, wasn't it? That was the selling point. But yeah, this track is. I like that vibe because I like the band. I mean, who doesn't? But I mean, they're not my favorite group of all time. But but I like the insinuation, as it were.
Mm.
And this track is sort of medley-ish. Unusual for Phil construction. Good tunes, interesting harmonies, interesting time changes, key changes, nice story lyric, and again, in reference to what you were saying earlier, brilliant sort of like Birds style, 8 Miles High, 12-string, chaotic 12-string guitar solo by Mike.
Mm.
And so that's a sort of real nod of the head to the Birds there. So I suppose that's another 60s reference, really.
Mm.
But yeah, I just think it's a perfect piece of sort of organic, like music writing, classic Genesis,
Mm.
really.
Mm.
I suppose the keyboard sound could be a bit alienating to some of the fans of the classic period, but I don't care about that too much. I just think it's so well written. So yeah, I know everyone hates this track, but including its own writer. But I for one love it. Um, right, so
Good.
we've reached the end of our fascinating journey. So and is there anything else you wanted to add, or should we just leave it there?
No, no. Well, I can actually say that Mick Barnard had no hand at all in writing me and Virgil.
That we know of. All right, great. Well, look, let's leave it there then. So, please remember to like and subscribe and comment on either the YouTube channel or the podcast. And Shaun and I will see you next week, I believe, if all goes according to plan. Peter will be back next week. Peter fans will be pleased to hear that. I shan't tell you the theme yet, so it would be a nice surprise. And yeah, so it's goodbye from Shaun.
Cheerio.
And it's goodbye from me. So, ta-ra for now. We'll see you next week. Bye, 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 bye.